Hello and welcome to the MKH Podcast. I am your host, Maximilian Hill, and today we have a very special guest. Javier Luraschi is the founder of Hal9, a startup that helps you bring emerging technologies like LLMs to your business. Javier is an 8-year veteran of Microsoft, and he's a great guy. Javier, thanks for coming on the podcast. How are you?
Hey Max, thanks for inviting me. Super excited to talk to you about AI startups and have some fun here. So thanks for inviting me, and hi everyone for those that are listening.
So you are in Seattle, correct?
I am indeed. The joke here is that it's rainy and today is rainy. So yes, still
Is
in
it?
Seattle.
Yeah, it's always raining in Seattle. So,
It is raining here. I love it very much, but I do complain about the weather. Yeah.
so tell us about Hal9.
Yeah. So at Hal9, as you mentioned, we help businesses bring LLMs into their business and their processes. And you can think of an LLM as ChatGPT, Gemini from Google, Claude from Anthropic. And the challenge is that if you use ChatGPT for work and you ask even simple questions, right? Like, hey, how many employees do we have? Or how does my schedule look like today? Or how many contracts do we have pending? Like any question that you can think that is relevant to your business. ChatGPT and LLMs don't know anything about that. It's just, they got trained over the data on the internet, and they're very good at answering general purpose, general knowledge questions, but they don't know anything about your business. So really at HAL9, what we do is we help
All
companies
right, I'll see you
with our
later.
with our platform HAL9. We help you integrate your processes to your services into ChatGPT, right? So we make it very, very easy for you to apply these technologies to say customer support, right? Or maybe for evaluating proposals or, like making your team more productive. At HAL9, we have an integration that automates the process of having Scrum meetings. So we don't have Scrum meetings at HAL9, but basically an LLM built on HAL9 infrastructure every day tells us what everyone worked in the previous day and give us like a summary of like, hey, have you worked on this? This other person worked on that. And, it saves us time, right? So yeah, those types of integrations that are custom and that your business needs. Every business is different. That's the type of problems that we help companies solve.
Very exciting. I know AI is on everyone's mind these days. It's such a rapidly growing and changing beast. Um, I think a lot of people are a little worried about whether or not it's going how it will impact them. I think one thing is for certain, it will impact most people. How it does remains to be seen. Um, so what are your thoughts about how people can future proof their careers and kind of partner with LLMs and ChatGPT uh, to, I guess, further their productivity and careers.
Yeah. So the most important part of this is to start using them. So look, we can look at the past, right? Because it's really hard to look at AI and make predictions. But if we look at past and history, we can kind of like think of how was the transition from not having internet to having email and websites, right? And then later on mobile. So if you think about it, right, like if you're like a salesperson or a software engineer, and you see the internet evolving, right? And people start using email and people start using web pages, and you could potentially have said, "Oh, that's not for me," right? That looks like a technology that is not very useful. Well, that was probably a really bad choice, right? Like whenever you see these types of technologies that do look transcendental, we know that AI, I have my theory of why it's transcendental. I can explain it, but yeah, whenever we fall into these categories where a technology is arriving, we just need to make sure that we use it, right? So the saying is, people are not gonna be replaced by AI, but people that are not using AI will. So the first step is you should be trying to figure out how does tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Llama, and the like fit into your daily job. You can also use HAL9. So, we have a free plan and the like. But basically figure out how does that help you be more productive and also be a skeptic, right? Don't assume that ChatGPT is an oracle that answers any question, right? So, they have like it's a tool that can be very good in some situations. is a tool that can be very bad in some other situations. And it's not like a black and white situation where it's use it 100% or zero. You need to find out where it fits in your day to day and kind of like just use it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a guy named Ray Dalio who's an influencer on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. And he's put it best in my of all the influencers and thought leaders. He said, basically people will have no choice but to evolve and learn technology. And if you don't learn technology, then you're going to have to pay someone who does know technology. But I thought that was a really good way of putting it. Um,
Yeah, no, I
and the
agree.
other thing you mentioned was, and I didn't really appreciate this when I was a student, but there's so much value in studying history because, the technologies change, the names change, the ways that the technologies are brought to market change, but in the high level themes repeat themselves, right? And if you look back at, the internet boom, right, which let's face it, there were people who said that the internet was
Yeah,
gonna
it's true.
fly, it was a fad, right? And
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's actually ever said, I haven't heard anyone say that about ChatGPT or AI.
I mean, I don't, it's usually easier in retrospect to figure out who said that, but you can I don't want to throw, like put anyone on the spot, but Gary Marcus, he's a well-known researcher of AI, has definitely, it's not that he's throwing, saying ChatGPT, it's pointless, right? Or something like that, but there's definitely a community of researchers that think like, well, like maybe we need another iteration. This is incomplete. Like AI is not there. So I do think that there's a good amount of skepticism. Like maybe I cannot come up with one public figure that said like, hey, it's bad, but I'm sure they're out there. Nothing is like so clear cut. I mean, we also live on a bubble. I mean, your computer science background podcast. I'm a software engineer. We're kind of like in the middle of it, but I've actually talked with people in other places in the world and the like, and some of them don't yet know what ChatGPT is, right? And so we're still early on, and yeah, things are evolving fast.
That's
But
hard to believe because you're in Seattle, I'm in New York City, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, two of the most modern city, but you're right. I mean, it's hard for us to really wrap that around our heads because we use it every day. Uh, but that's one of the values of having a global perspective and traveling, a better
yeah,
understanding of the world. Um, let's see. So you've had wonderful career. A lot of my audience are students,
mhm.
specifically computer science majors who are interested in breaking into tech, but not just students. I have mid-career people who are trying to break into tech because that's where all the action is. What advice would you give to someone who is trying to get that first opportunity in the
Yeah,
tech world?
yeah. So, well, there's different ways here. So if you want to get into tech, something that is really important is the interview process. And I'm sure they're familiar with, but many of big tech firms like focus really heavily on, your algorithmic skills, right? Can you figure out, which algorithm is better and design it? I'm sure like there's other resources, relevant about the interview process and getting into tech. I think the part that is relevant to mention on this podcast, especially since we're talking about generative AI and LLMs, is, as I mentioned, kind of like drilling down on my overall suggestion that we discussed, right? Of make sure that you're using LLMs and Gemini and Claude and the like, and HAL9, to help you be a better student, to help you be a better software engineer. And then the question is really, how does that look like, right? Because we don't want students to get the wrong idea. If a professor asks you, hey, your homework is to write some Python code that sorts a list of numbers, you shouldn't just go to ChatGPT, copy the question, paste it, get the result, and send it back to the teacher, right? That's, anyone can do that and you're not learning. But the very interesting way that I've seen students and I've seen myself actually using ChatGPT to learn is it's okay to ask that question to ChatGPT. It's like, hey, I'm sorting a list of numbers, like what are, this is for a computer assignment, like how, what are good ideas for doing this? It's like, hey, you're gonna get suggested. It's like, hey, you can consider something simple like bubble sort. And then you're like, okay, like what is bubble sort? It's like, oh, this is the algorithm. And how does it work? Like why does it work that way? When was it invented? Why was it invented? Right? Like, are there better ways of doing, this sorting, right? And then you're going to get to binary sorting, right? And a few more advanced algorithms. And that is the type of expectation that I would have from someone today. They're using ChatGPT to learn more, not ChatGPT to, just get their job done, right? Because I can do that, right? Like if I were to hire someone as a software engineer, I can just tell them, well, I don't need to tell them, that, right? I can just ask ChatGPT, give me an efficient algorithm or X or Y. So I expect you to be kind of like more proficient and in some ways outsmart ChatGPT. Yeah.
So you are the founder of Hal9, right? Um, let's say a student reaches out to you and they've got an interview, right?
Mhm.
Tell me about your thought process when it comes to hiring people. What are you looking for? What do you value? Skills? Do you value personality trait, hard skills? So tell me about your hiring process.
Yeah. So my philosophy, and I think it's important to start from there. There's a great, uh, software engineer and also has a blog called Joel on Software. I'm sure, some of your students might be familiar with it. And one learning that I've got from working in big tech, has been, what are my values when I interview someone, right? And there's this blog post from Jolan Software on hiring that has been in the back of my head all my career, which suggests that you need to look for two things. The first one is it's smart, and the second one is get things done. That probably applies to many other jobs, not just software engineering. But really, in the world of a programming interview and looking for skills and the like, I want to make what does it mean to be smart? It means like, hey, if I ask you a problem, you can solve it, right? Like you use the tools like that are correct, right? You know the difference between bubble sort and binary search, right? Like you have a broad range of architectures and the cloud and mobile and trade-off, right? And that is the part of like being smart that I think most people are familiar with and they're expected on the interview process. The second one, get things done. That one, to be honest, is more subjective and it's harder to spot. Some people are very good at interviewing and being very productive during the interview, but that doesn't necessarily mean that on the job they're gonna get things done and be proactive, right? So unfortunately, I don't have like a good prescriptive way of figuring that
Hiring's
out.
tough. I mean,
It's
I think
tough. Yeah.
I interviewed a guy named Henning Sipe who he has built a company
Hmm.
that helps people find great jobs.
Yep.
And he's a software engineer and he said hiring is very difficult.
Hmm.
Uh, I think from my experience, hard skills, very valuable, right? But they can be taught. More
Hmm.
important is this someone trustworthy, right?
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of very skilled people out there who you would never want to work with, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's a combination of the two. But yeah, hiring, it's never,
Yeah. And
and
it's something
there's so
important.
much riding on it because if you're the founder of a startup, you don't have unlimited resources, right? So you have
Yeah.
to make a decision. And if it's a
Yeah.
bad decision, it can be very expensive.
Yeah, we have a hack there. I can talk about it, but I would just say that 100% interviews are tough, and they're not tough just for the interviewee, also for the interviewer. We only get to know someone, for 1 hour, right? Sometimes it's 45 minutes, and you need to make a decision. So I think something that is worth for people listening to this episode is that don't feel bad when you get rejected, right? I mean, it's obviously everyone gets hurt when you get a rejection, right? We all want to get a job or the job that we're looking for, but the process is not perfect. And, kind of like on sales, right? Like it's a numbers game, right? You need to do your best and prepare as much as you can, but it's also hard to get a job on the first try. Hopefully everyone listening to this episode, like can get a job on the first try, but, interviews are weird and, we do our best, but, yeah, it's tough. Related to the hack that we do in HAL9, we like to hire people for the long term. And we actually, what has worked well for us that I don't see other startups doing, it's like we try to always start with internships. And the internship is kind of like flexible, right? I mean, obviously internships exist in other companies, but like we really plan to hire someone over a year. Like, hey, like, come on, do an internship. We'll give you a project, like, and we expect them to grow on the job and also gives us some time to understand better, are they really motivated, right? Like, are they struggling, like, and the like. And we try to make that process a bit more smoother and have kind of like low expectations, but like but it's still tough, right? It's still tough. It has its trade-off. And yeah, I mean, I think hiring and working with great people it's a challenge. And yeah.
You mentioned sales, and yeah, I mean, sales, lots of rejection involved. But I think you're in sales. You are the CEO of a venture, of a startup, which ultimately is a sales role, right? So tell me, how do you deal with the rejection?
Honestly, I've never cared about rejection. Maybe I should care more, honestly. I think I'm different in that sense where rejection doesn't really bother me. Maybe it should bother me more. So, everyone, has personalities and we need to grow in different areas. Yeah, so I do think that rejection has an important role also for those of you that are more like me, where we don't care that much about rejection. Rejection is also important because it makes you be nervous, and some level of stress is good in your job or where you're selling, right? Like you want to get the stuff done. Anyways, but yeah, in that sense, rejection is not really my issue. I expect rejection. I've gone through that a lot and I'm like, yeah, it's gonna happen. But yeah, I mean, I would say that for me, particularly on sales, is not what it's not my primary background. I'm a software engineer. I went to school for software engineering. I also have a degree on mathematics. So I'm pretty nerdy, I'm pretty technical, and sales has been one of those skills that I had to grow into. It didn't come natural to me.
We have
And
to
what
stay open-minded to learning new things.
you have to, you're gonna be good at some things, you're gonna be bad at other ones. It's obviously great to build your career trying to maximize on the things that you love, but there's no career where you can only do the things that you love, right? Like, I mean, there's always going to be challenges. In my case, sales, yeah, I mean, it's something that, doesn't come natural to me. And, one thing that I've learned is that, well, first of all, you need to grow, you need to do the work, get advisors, get the support to get better at that. But I think it's also important to find a way of doing sales that you love. And, that applies to everything, right? Maybe computer science doesn't come naturally, but you love video games, right? So, maybe, going through that angle is the way that, motivates you to do it. So in my case for sales, like I do a lot of technical sales. I love doing demos. I love, building, proof of concepts and talking, really passionately about the technology and what we do and the like. And that's really hard to compete against from someone that is only doing sales. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm a better salesperson, but at the end of the day, you need to play to your strengths and also grow your skills, right? So, yeah, I mean, super important.
You had a long, distinguished career at Microsoft. Tell me about your time at Microsoft. What did you learn? Tell us a little bit about the projects you worked on.
Yeah, for sure. So, first of all, it was not my plan to work at Microsoft ever at all. Like, I knew that I was very good at software engineering. I'm originally from Mexico City, and I've always been kind of like the best engineer that I've known, and like has come naturally to me and the like. But I had no idea that I could work at Microsoft, right? Like Microsoft 20 years ago was like Google or Tesla, right? It's like there was no better company really to work for, and yeah, so I apply. It was kind of random, like, hey, it looks like they're recruiting, and I'm like, oh, I'll try, but this is probably not going to work. And sure enough, like 2 months later, I was working here. So that was a little bit kind of like life change, unexpected turn of events where like, oh, wait, I'm good enough to work at Microsoft. I had no idea. But yeah, I mean, honestly, Microsoft was my dream job for many years. Um, it's one of those things that you never, some kids might dream to be astronauts. Some kids might become astronauts, and then you look at, oh my God, what happened? So I felt like
Very
that.
difficult to become an astronaut.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe you need to put the work or something, right? I mean, you still need to put the work to be a software engineer, right? And a good one. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, I mean, for many years, like Microsoft was truly my passion, and I'm super grateful to them for bringing talent all over the world and, giving me a place where I was able to grow professionally, with very hard, challenging problems and products and a great team and the like. However, also what I learned, I actually learned it after I left Microsoft, but something that it didn't felt right. So I was working on, like what should be the best company ever, right? And at the time, and somehow I wasn't happy, right? And it's like it took me some time to realize that, but I was like, I didn't really know what it was, but my intuition told me to move to smaller groups. So I moved to a new group that was starting. And then after that group, I moved to Microsoft Research. So I used to work in office, move at Microsoft Research, and I kind of like, unconsciously moved to smaller and smaller teams. And then later on, I realized, wait a moment, maybe where I belong is a startup. Like maybe it's not like, like bigger, organizations that, are great in some ways, like you kind of specialize in something very, very specific, very, very technical. But my intuition and, now in retrospect, I understand that big companies are really very different than small companies and startups. And personally, where our thrive are in small teams, starting things from scratch, playing multiple roles, getting things done, moving really fast. That's truly what I love doing. But it took me, basically those 8 years, until I left Microsoft and decided, hey, I'm going to do my own startup. Which, I didn't start it. I ended up working at our studio, but it took me a while to realize, hey, this is great, but it's not for me, right? So, yeah.
I'd like for you to reflect on the transition from
Mhm.
working from a massive corporation like Microsoft to running your own thing. And for anyone, I guess anyone who might be interested in you know, exploring that route, is there anything you might have done differently?
Uh, mm, I don't know. I mean, that's such a hard question, right? Because I know my own version of reality. So I think it was the right choices all along. Because, you know, um, I, you know, I did what I did. But I think something interesting is that I did follow my intuition. If something doesn't feel right, look for a change. Why is this not correct and the like? Now, for people thinking whether they should go to big tech or do a startup, I would say that both are great, but they have pros and cons, right? So when you work on a big company, you have a stable paycheck, which is great, like the stability of a career. You get to learn from a lot of smart people, more complex, problems. However, you lose a lot of autonomy, right? Like you're part of a bigger organization, like you have like a very narrow view of the world. You're going to work on feature A or feature B, and that's what you get to do. You'll have to wait 20 years, to kind of like progress your career to be able to have more influence and have more autonomy. Now, when you work at a startup, right, either for a startup, which I did after Microsoft, or when you start your own startup, you have like the opposite, right? So you have the benefit of, you can actually have a lot of autonomy. You get to learn more, like hands-on. Like that's one of the biggest benefits that I tell people when they work for Hal9. It's like we're not gonna make more money than Microsoft, right? Like that's not,
That's
that's not
never
gonna
going to
happen.
happen.
It's not gonna happen. But your progression as an engineer is gonna be so much faster because I can literally promote you like every 3 months, not on compensation wise, but like on like on career scope, right? Like if you're putting the work and you tell me like, hey, I solved those problems, I can take more, like you will, and we've seen it with the people that have worked together with us, is like, yeah, their career progression is like so fast. In 3 years, they're like own big chunks and like they know Kubernetes and the front end and the back end. And it's just like this is like a principal level person in Microsoft, right? That takes them like 10, 15 years to, have worked in so many different things. So yeah, learning is definitely one of the huge ones. Obviously, con is the uncertainty of, the paycheck. Obviously we do our best to, pay on time, but and do it consistently. But I always tell anyone that works in a startup or with us is like, look, we're a startup, right? This is our runway. We're doing our best, but like there's always the risk on a startup that we might have to close shop, right? And it might not be related to you. It's like business related, my fault and the like. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely trade-offs, but I do think that for someone coming out of college, going to startup, I think is a great option because you get to learn so much more. I think going to big companies, that's also great if that's what you're looking for. I'm not sure about middle companies. I haven't done much of that, but I feel like I'm on the extremes. Either try to shoot for the work, for the Googles, for the Facebook, for the Teslas, or join a really cool startup that you are really passionate about where you can grow really fast. That's kind of like my point of view.
You were referred through a mutual connection, Jason Mays, who
Mhm.
is doing wonderful things in the web AI space at Google. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with Jason Mays and uh, talk about the importance of a referral.
Yeah, well, everything is connections and referrals, right? And we help each other. The customers that we had have mostly come from referrals, right? It's like I work with Javier, like, I know that he does good work, like check his startup. And so, yeah, I mean, everything in my career has, call it referrals, call it, your network, right? But you have a, like you do hopefully good work, and people notice, and like then that opens up possibilities. And I think referrals is just one symptom or one outcome of growing your network, doing good work, and fostering those relationships. Now, it's specifically about yeah, the web space. When I quit our studio, I had this idea ingrained in my mind that we needed a new version of an AI platform. It's just one of those things, again, like sometimes I do intuitive things before my rational brain catches up to it. But I had this intuition that, hey, the AI platforms that we have, they're kind of like pretty obsolete. And back in the day, I was working with R and Python, which are two programming languages with different, qualities. And I wanted to find a programming language that could unite them both and be in the middle and create kind of like AI solutions with that language. And I got into the rabbit hole of looking at JavaScript, which is one of the foundational technologies on web AI, web ML, which Jason is calling that out. And I just got really passionate about exploring that space. It's like, hey, can we do AI directly on the browser? Because then you don't need to install anything. Everything runs JavaScript, right? Like the servers, mobile, React Native. And so I got immersed into this space of like, there must be something here. And yeah, that's how I connected with Jason. Like, we both have that passion. Obviously, Jason back then was pushing for TensorFlow JS, which is one of the projects that brings the AI technology into the web. And yeah, I explored that space, and then I realized, kind of like, how does that fit over on the overall picture of AI platform? We still very much, all the way to today, we use the web heavily. So our platform generates a lot of charts and the like that is powered by the browser and our interactive and the like. So a lot of that core technology is still part of HAL9. But yeah, that's how we connected. And super important to have a network that you grow with, because realistically, it's a group of people that you're working together with,
It's
and that's
true. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made was not building my professional network early on. I think
yeah,
because I guess when you're young, you think, well, I know it all, right? My work is good enough to speak for itself, but very rarely, unless your name is Elon Musk or Bill Gates, you have
yeah,
to
yeah.
build a network. Um, and I don't think it has to be like a slimy thing, right? It's just
No,
really
no, not at
about
all.
connecting genuinely with
Yeah, I think honestly that's more important. If you try to do it, I need to build a network. I'm gonna message all these people. It just really doesn't work out. But especially for technical people, especially I'm reflecting on myself. I tend to be sometimes very narrow focus of like I'm just gonna do it myself, right? Like I'm gonna code it, and it's a great attitude to have. Nothing wrong with that. But you should broaden up your scope. In my case, like, hey, share with people what you're building, right? And I do a lot of that today. But yeah, like just genuinely reaching out to people like Jason, right? And I met Gandla Borde, which was also in that community. And we became acquaintance just by reaching out and being like, hey, I'm building this, right? I'm doing that, or I need help with X and Y, right? So just kind of like using networking as a tool to help you solve the things that you're passionate for. I think what is important. But yeah, building a network for the sake of building a network, probably not the best idea, but just do things that you're passionate for, solve problems that you like to solve, and tell people and ask for help when needed. That's, I think, is really important.
uh, are there any books or podcasts that you would recommend to a current college student, recent graduate, or career changer?
I like three books, I think, top of mind. They're not related to computer science. The first one is called Innovator's Dilemma. It's a really old book. I think it's the best book on business, honestly. We don't have time to discuss it, but maybe you can link it on Amazon or the like. So, The Innovator's Dilemma. We talk about history, and I really love *Sapiens*, the history of humanity from Yuval Noah
Yuval Noah
Harari,
Harari. Yeah.
and the entire trilogy, or as many books that he has, Homo Deus and 24 Problems for the 21st Century.
He's
That
got
one.
there was like a comic version of that book.
Oh,
It was
I got that for my
illustrated.
kids. It's
Yeah.
great.
I mean,
Yeah.
and it's not just for kids. I found those to be much more enjoyable than just reading
Yeah.
lots of text. But yeah, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then the last one is just for fun. It's called The Three-Body Problem. It's a trilogy, and it's, the show is already out in Netflix. It's like a great show as well. So if you want a show recommendation, the first book, it's already out as a series. But yeah, read the books. I think they're amazing. It's one of my favorite books. And I'll add the plus one, which is Contact, the book. There's also a movie. It's an oldie science fiction book, but love Contact. And yeah, I mean, hopefully, that inspires someone to pick up those books. They're pretty great.
If you could have a billboard that was overlooking a highway in Seattle and it could say 10 words or less, what would it say?
Yeah, I think it would say like buy Hal9, buy, or something like. I mean, it's like a free billboard, right? Like that's awesome. Maybe I would spend more time like on the actual slogan, but something around those lines is just that would be
Hal9's
awesome.
website would be on that
Yeah,
billboard.
just there, put it there, or like put
What
like a
is
big
Hal9's website?
Hal 9000, like evil eye there with Hal9 and make people be like, wait, what is that thing? And it's like, like come to my website. But yeah, that would be fun. Yeah.
If people wanted to learn more about Hal9, where should they go?
Yeah, hal9.com. So we have
Hal9.com.
a
Very simple. I like it.
we have a free tier plan. You can build generative AI images with Flux, so you can create awesome images for free. You have integrations with different use cases and the like. So yeah, have fun, play with it, and it is a platform, right? So for those that are learning computer science and the like, you can also see it as, hey, what can I build on top of Hal9? How can I get into this space and the like? But yeah, hal9.com. Thank you.
Very good. Javier, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, talking about Hal9, your incredible career, and keep in touch. Hope to have you on our podcast again in the future.
No, for
And
sure, Max.
wishing you continued success at Hal9, okay?
Thank you. It was great, and bye, everyone.
I heard that we hitting that 42nd, let's go. I heard that we hitting that 34th, let's go. I heard that we hitting that 14th, let's go. Let's go, let's go, let's go. What? I heard that we hitting that Union Square, let's go. I heard that we hitting that Howard Square, let's go. I heard that we hitting that Times Square, let's go, let's go, let's go.